Hey everyone, welcome back. So I want to finish my video series, Who is Tasha Jackson, with this very last video. And it is the story of me having had long COVID. So that story actually, like many stories that I have, actually starts way back in my childhood. So I was always a really sickly child. So I had strep throat 2 or 3 times a year. I had horrible allergies. Anytime that there was flu season, I was always sick. I'm shocked that I always was in school. I was sick all the time. I don't hardly ever remember times where I was not sick. My birthday's in February, so I was always sick on my birthday, and then it being, St. Louis, if any of you are from the Midwest, you know. So, I mean, literally, I was always sick all the time. So much to the point that I had to have my tonsils removed whenever I was 19 because I had a very serious viral infection in my tonsils. And for those of you that do not know, your tonsils are your first immune defense. So I am traveling now through life without immune system defense number one. So that's the first thing. And so then again, of course, throughout my life, I've been sick because I have a huge part of my immune system missing. Okay, that's the first thing. And so then let's kind of fast forward to 2019. So there are a lot of people, and I don't want to speculate, and I don't want to say, I don't want to stir pots, conspiracy theories, whatever. Okay, I'm not here to do that. But what I will say is that what I have heard from numerous other people and also from watching lots of other long haulers on YouTube is that they became incredibly ill in like November, December 2019. So that November, I remember I got sick and I had to take off the week of Thanksgiving from work. Which is something that usually, I mean, as a teacher, I would just suck it up and I would just go to work, right? Like a lot of us would used to do. And like one of my coworkers, she was really sick too for like 6 weeks. It was really a long time. And so at that same time, I was in the process of buying a house, which if anyone has bought a house before, it's incredibly stressful. So I was sick, I was stressed. That last part of the semester is also probably the second most stressful time of the school year, the first being the first 4 weeks of the school year. And then the last month of the semester is the second most stressful time. And so I was really being bombarded with a lot of stress. And then I ended up having a partial recovery. And then I ended up moving over the winter break, over the 2 weeks of the winter break, but I was still pretty sick. And then whenever school started again, I remember so this is now 2020, January 2020. I went back to work and I think I worked the first day and then the rest of the week I had to take off because I had like a relapse, I guess. But of course, like during that time, that's whenever we just first started hearing about COVID-19. We didn't really know what it was or anything. It wasn't really like, I was working in school and was like being sick is just a normal part of being a teacher. And so, you couple stress, huge amounts of stress on top of me not having tonsils, but then also I have GI issues now. 70% of your immune system is in your guts. So if you have poor gut health, which I did, because again, being a teacher, you eat a lot of candy, you eat a lot of sweets. I live in Arizona and I love Mexican candy, which isn't sweet, but it's chili and salt. So I had a horrible. I still do. I'm in recovery still from that. Like I've had to make huge changes. I'll talk about in a little bit. But I had all of these, like in the beginning of the year, it was just horrible, and then it took me still a long time to finally recover. So it was about spring break, so March, right before we all went into quarantine, that I finally started to recover from having been sick from November. Okay, so that was 2020. Since I was not in a classroom for the rest of 2020, it was all online. Um, and then by that time, I had other work that I was doing. I was working from home online, blah, blah, blah. Um, I didn't have a lot of exposure to the virus. My kids did go back to school. They were in the classroom, which is then how we ended up contracting the Omicron variants. So I did not have COVID since 2000, what I believe to be 2019, all the way until January 2022. And so I was not sick that whole time. And let me tell you how much I was so grateful, because I've always been a really sickly person, chronically ill my whole life. So for me to not have been sick for 2 years, that was just a phenomenal blessing to me, because I've always been sick in some form or fashion, um, multiple times in a year, just because of my profession. And again, also from having poor gut health and no tonsils. So whenever Omicron was full force, there was an outbreak in my daughter's class, not in the school, but in her class. And the symptoms that were being reported at that time were not the symptoms that we had. So I did not know that we had COVID because we were exhibiting symptoms. So there was like a head pressure. It was not a headache. My eyes, like right here on the sides of my eyes, like that bone and everything behind my eyes, I couldn't see. I was having vision problems. I ended up with severe eye floaters. Luckily now I'm kind of just down to one, but I had them very severely in both eyes. And like the head pressure. It felt like something was like squishing my skull. That's what I had experienced for a week before I developed a fever. My daughter, the same. So she had those symptoms. We were still sending her to school because she was saying, my head hurts, my head hurts. I was giving her, Tylenol, and then she was going to school, and then she would still come home and be like, my head hurts. And I'm like, well, I don't know what this is. I don't know what to do. Right. Like, are you drinking enough water? Are you dehydrated? Are you eating well? Like, I don't know. And then that Saturday she developed the fever. So I had sent her to school for an entire week before she had developed the fever, all the while she was contagious. And I didn't know, because what was reported was not what we were experiencing. And so then I ended up, because I had to take care of her, I ended up getting sick as well. So it was 5 days. I had a fever and I had a cough and I had the sniffles, and it was like the flu. And I was like, oh, this isn't that bad. Right. Oh, this isn't that bad. Like it just feels like a flu. I have a sniffly nose. And, for the most part, I was working, but there were, times whenever I would lay down, or, I was managing myself pretty well because, being a teacher, I learned how to manage my inflammation pretty well, my illnesses and things like that. And so, the home remedies, you pull everything out. And then I remember from Sunday, no, from Monday afternoon until Thursday. My fever broke on Wednesday. Thursday, I was back at work online, and I was like, fine. I go to bed Thursday night and I wake up Friday and I couldn't move. And I had the severe muscle fatigue. I could barely breathe because my diaphragm, the muscles in my diaphragm. So essentially, what had happened to me was COVID like attacked my muscles. So it was very difficult to move. It was difficult to breathe. Um, I couldn't eat. I wasn't hungry. Then, whenever I would try to eat, I was very nauseous. And so, um, at that point, I had really learned just from the 2 years of COVID that you can't really go to the doctor. I mean, with all viruses, you just manage symptoms. This is what I've learned as a teacher. Seek professional guidance on that. I'm not a doctor. Make sure that you reach out if you have questions because I'm not a virologist. This is just, I'm going to present to you all the research that I did and the playlist that I created to help myself and in hopes that I can help other people that are also suffering from having long COVID because for the most part I had a quick recovery because quick 4 months compared to some people that have had ongoing issues for the last 2 years, 2.5 years. And so my recovery was very short compared to what other people have been reporting and what other people have been experiencing having had long COVID. For 3 weeks, I was bedridden. Um, I couldn't, I had to keep like snacks. I just had like nutrient dense foods because whenever you're sick, the first thing that you need to do is you need to feed your cells because cellular function is really incredibly important while you're sick because you need to boost your cells so that they work to fight the infection, right? And then you also need to fight the inflammation. You need to reduce the inflammation or keep the inflammation at a low because it's whenever you have chronic runaway inflation is whenever the disease really progresses because your body is really trying to fight off whatever it is that you're sick with. And so I knew that if I could just manage the inflammation and if I could manage the symptoms, that at some point it would pass. And that most people were reporting 14 to 21 days. So I was like, I'm at least going to be that because, again, I have been overly stressed. My adrenals are shot. I have no tonsils, like all of these things list. Been sick my whole life. Like my immune system has just been overloaded and overrun for just my entire existence. So for me, recovery from illness is not easy and it takes a much longer time than most people. And so that's essentially how I managed for 3 weeks. We were in quarantine for 2. So, we were ordering food from online or we were ordering grocery stores from online because, for 2 weeks we couldn't leave the house because that's whenever we were the most contagious. And then like the 15th to the 21st day, I still wasn't leaving the house, but at the same time, I could move about the house a lot easier. And I live in 2 stories. And so there was a certain point in time whenever I couldn't even walk up the stairs without being winded. There were times whenever I would have to walk downstairs or I would have to go downstairs for something. And then I would have to crawl very slowly back upstairs in order to not faint by the time I got upstairs because I had lost so much mobility with my muscles that it just, moving, just going about like my normal routine, I couldn't do. And then I lost so much strength in my muscles the 3 weeks that I was laying in bed. So the beginning of February, I recovered. for the most part. Like I still had some sniffles, but like it was my birthday and I was like, let's party because I've been sick for 3 weeks and my head's like trapped in the house. I need to get out because, like I think that's the part of where your mental health really starts to suffer is, the sun comes up, the sun goes down quickly and you sleep through a lot of it and you'll wake up in the middle of the night and not know what time it is and your sleep gets completely messed up and then you're not eating very well because you can't eat or every time you eat you get really sick. So there was a lot that went with it. So it was from the beginning of February that I was fine, and then in March I had a relapse. Now I will say this, and I speak for myself and myself only and my beliefs and what I know to be true from my own experience. Other people are going to disagree with me, and that's totally fine. Viruses are viruses, and once they are in your body, they're in your body and they don't leave. Example, HIV. Example, herpes. Example, the virus that causes mono or EBV, whichever one, I can't remember which one that happens, right? Chickenpox. Okay. So all of these viruses, they interact with your DNA and then they like become a part of you. Okay. So essentially what you have to do is you just have to learn how to live with a new body because you have a new viral introduction. You have you have a new body. That's just how it is. Like you have a friend now that lives inside your body. It's like, I don't know. I used to like to make myself feel better. I used to think about it as like venom. Like, I have a symbiote living inside my body now that I have to learn how to take care of because this is my new life. And so I had a viral reactivation. So I I personally do not believe in reinfection of the same variants. I don't know if that's possible. Um, from what I know about having the flu, we have a different variant every year, right? Like it mutates every year and we have a different variant. And so then that's how you're able to get the flu year after year after year because the variant changes. So just based on that, just logic, okay, you can be reinfected with different variants, which is, if I had it in 2019, that's a very different variant than I had in 2022. Okay. So now I had a reactivation in March. And the first thing that I noticed was all of my sinus cavity, again, like all of the sinuses, because that's where it goes in and it replicates, it started tingling. That was the first symptom that I noticed. And then I started to have a little bit of congestion. And then things went downhill very quickly for me at that point. So after about 2 weeks of me trying to figure out, like I tried to do the same things that I did whenever I had the initial infection. So whenever you have a virus, you have the initial infection and then you have your reactivations. Another example would be people that have the virus of what was the chickenpox? I can't remember now because I'm tired. Sorry. Um, and then later in life, it turns into shingles. Okay. So we have an introduction and then we have a reactivation. People that have cold sores, you have your initial infection, which is usually the worst. And then you have reactivation, which is whenever it comes out, and then you have more cold sores, right? And so again, I had a reactivation of the virus, and the reactivation of the virus caused me to be more sick than when I had initially had the virus, which is sometimes what happens. Okay. Whenever there are viruses. And again, this is just based on my own life experience and the research that I did. And I did put all of the research in the description box and the link for the playlist that I had created based on all of the research that I did. So if there are people looking for resources, definitely check there. And then those videos, they have resources in their description boxes. So make sure that you go to those description box those videos, go to their description box and then check and see those resources as well. Because I did not put their resources in my description box. I put them and then you can go there, watch their videos and get their resources. Okay. Do your due diligence to do your research. It's incredibly important. So what ended up happening was I started to develop a really severe brain fog. My eye floaters got way worse. I started to develop, I had a student in the past that had lupus and she talked about something called alligator skin. And I'm not exactly sure, but she did show me, but it's like your skin basically becomes scaly because lupus is an autoimmune condition. And so I developed on the back of my, like where my ankle is, like this scaly skin that I didn't have before. And it was super itchy. It was kind of like eczema, but way worse. And it looks really different than like eczema or psoriasis or something like that. And so, and then I had developed severe cardiac issues. So here I was like in the bed. I had really high blood pressure. I couldn't move around my house. I had this rash. I couldn't eat. My gut was worse, so much worse. And at that time, I was only able to eat fruits, vegetables, and fish. I couldn't eat chicken anymore. I couldn't, and I never ate pork, but I couldn't eat beef anymore. Like my digestive system just could not process it. And then I also developed like food aversion. So chicken is something that I still have an aversion to. I smell it or I look at it and I just want to puke. I don't know why I can't eat chicken anymore. I just can't. And so, you're like, okay, well, I need to start to figure this out. So I took to YouTube and I started reading articles. So the NIH, so the National Institute of Health, which is funded by the US government, there are studies that have been conducted on various variations, whatever, of COVID. But because Omicron was so new, there wasn't research that was out yet. The latest research that was out was from the Delta variant, and that all of that medical journal research and everything was published in November of 2021. And here I was in March 2022 trying to figure out, okay, how do I live with a new variant? What is going to happen to me? Because there's not a lot in the media about it. It's kind of like there in the beginning, it was like, it's not the flu. And then it became like, oh, you have it and you're sick for 2 weeks and then you're fine after that. And it's like, no, you're not. No, it's a virus that lives in your body forever. You're not fine. And so that information was incredibly lacking in the United States. And so I had to look outside the United States. So the majority of the research that I had found was in Canada and the UK and some from South Africa. So if you are a long hauler and you are looking for resources, I highly encourage you to go to those governments' websites and look for information. Look if they have anything similar to the NIH. I encourage you to look there as well, because again, unfortunately, the research either is incredibly lacking or just doesn't exist in the United States. And so then I also started finding videos from long haulers from other countries. So if you're a long hauler and like it's really taken a toll, like your mental health, again, like you're sick, you can't figure it out, you go to the doctor. I went to the cardiologist and he's like, it's your cholesterol. And I'm like, no, no. This is not cholesterol. I almost had 2 heart attacks. I can't get up the stairs. My blood pressure is high, really high, and I'm in my 30s. Like, no, I'm a pescatarian. Like, I'm pretty active. I exercise every day. I'm like, no. And then I went to another doctor, and then that other doctor looked at I had some labs done like 3 months prior. And then she was like, oh, it's this. I was like, no. So then that was the point with which I was like, I'm not going to get answers. I'm not going to get it's on me. I got to do this for myself. If I want to live, I got to figure this out. And so again, I just dug deeper, and I just watched video after video after video, and come to find out. So there was one doctor that I found from the UK. Her name is Dr. Tina Pierce. She had done an interview where she had discussed her daughter having mast cell activation syndrome. And what that is your cells, your mast cells that are part of your immune system and help to fight disease and things like that. You can read the more complicated research from that if you'd like. I'm just going to give the watered down version here. So essentially, your cells, whenever you get sick, produce histamine to fight your infections. But what can happen, especially if you have autoimmune conditions, which I did because I have hypothyroidism, and leaky gut and all this kind of stuff. And the leaky gut is a major contributing factor that even though I was eating pretty healthy, I still had damage to the lining of my intestines. And so what was happening was my cells were producing histamine, and then that histamine was then leaking through my gut to the entire rest of my body, because your blood runs through your entire body. So long COVID is systemic because it's your blood itself that is the problem. And so the brain fog, it explains the brain fog, it explains the vision issues, it explains the rash, it explains my cardiac issues, and explains my gut issues. So everything is explained by the fact that too much histamine was being circulated throughout my body. And now you have to figure out, okay, well, how do you get the histamine out of your body when you have too much histamine? So you can't just take antihistamines. It's so much more than that, because for me, again, sorry for the dog if you can hear it, my neighbor's dog. So for me, what I found was you have to go on an incredibly restrictive diet, so low histamine diet. And again, a lot of those resources that I found that I'm putting in the description box have that as well. Talking about a low histamine diet. Now, a low histamine diet is not a forever fix, and it's incredibly difficult, and it's incredibly restrictive. I cannot stress how restrictive that diet is, but that diet is what saved my life. And so there is no eat these things. So this is what I want to share with you. If you go to a website or go to some information and it says eat these things, and then you won't have issues, please find caution in that, because everyone's physiological system is different. And so there were things that were on that low histamine list that I couldn't eat, that triggered a reaction, that I got really sick. But then there were things like chocolate that are really high in histamine, as reported by some of these sites, that I could eat, that I was eating. So, and it's dark chocolate, not milk chocolate. I couldn't never have dairy anyways. I've been dairy free and gluten free for a really long time. So for me to eliminate those things from my diet, I already had that. For me, it was just fruits and vegetables are killing me. I have to figure out which ones. And you kind of go on a scavenger hunt. So you start with a list, and I was eating like steamed turnips. And Like I couldn't eat spinach. Spinach is a huge part of my diet. And so I couldn't eat spinach anymore. Potatoes, bananas, some of these things I could I could no I could no longer eat because those are the things that were causing me to be sick because these fruits and vegetables, they're the cause or the source of the high histamine in the first place. And so you have to eliminate those things from your diet and you also have to flush your body system out. So you have to give your body time for the histamine to be released from your body before you start to feel better. For me, um, that started after 6 weeks. I got to a point where because your body can become malnourished. So I was taking a lot of supplements. I was living off of supplements more than I was eating food because I just couldn't eat. I ended up losing a lot of weight as a result of having been sick and not being able to eat. Um, and I come to find out also actually through this process, part of the reason why my cholesterol was high, so my LDL cholesterol is high, is because I have a mostly plant-based diet. Because your whenever you have a mostly plant-based diet, your liver does not like produce or absorb or something like that LDL, whatever. Anyways, that's a different topic for a different day, but just, just as a side note that I learned like as through this. So I was like, oh, so as long as my other numbers are good, I'm good. So, now I'm like, oh, now I know why my cholesterol is high and it's actually not a bad thing. So, there's that too that I had learned from this process or through this process. And so I had to not only allow my body to be flush of all the histamines, but I also had to allow my body to heal. And that's where I still am struggling. I slowly started to reintroduce things back into my diet. I still could not have bananas. I still could not have chicken. Poor chicken. I love chicken, but not anymore. Um, and so, again, those you have to figure it out for yourself. And it's horrible. And I hate to say that, but until there's more firm research that comes out, that's the first thing. The second thing is again, everyone's physiology is completely different. So again, even though there are things that are on the approved list, there still may be things on that list that you can't eat. But then likewise, there may be things that are on the, list of things to avoid that you can eat. I don't suggest starting with that list and just kind of winging it. I definitely suggest with the approved list first, eating the things from the approved list and then seeing how you feel. It's really an elimination diet. And then you really have to be so careful whenever you're adding things back in, because I had eaten half of a banana and for an entire day, my blood pressure was really, really high and I was bedridden. Okay. In those instances, that's when you can take the antihistamine. So I take a homeopathic antihistamine whenever I start to feel, and I know that I've eaten something that is causing a histamine reaction whenever I start to feel that tingling in my face and I start to have congestion. I know that that's what that is now because I gave myself the time and space and I listened to my body. I did a lot of journaling. I did a lot of journaling because I had to know which foods were the ones that were the triggers. And you have to eliminate the triggers. And then as you slowly start to add things back in and you don't have reactions, okay, this is a food that's safe for me now. And you add it on your safe list. Because remember, everyone's list is going to look different or everyone's list is going to be different. So, so now where am I at now? So my blood pressure is normal. I still do have very severe GI issues, but my brain fog has cleared. My vision has cleared for the most part. Like I said, I do have one spot still left, but it's not as dark as it was. So it is improving, but it's still there in my field of vision, kind of just like hanging out. My cardiac issues have completely resolved. So whenever I went back to the cardiologist, I actually took the list of resources and I said, I told you before I had long COVID. And he admitted, he's like, I didn't know what to do to help you. And I was like, thank you for being honest. Here's a list of resources that you can use for your other patients. And he was greatly appreciative because he's like, I had 3 or 4 more patients that came in after you that had said the same thing. And he's like, I didn't know. And I was like, well, I had to do my research and here's the research. Here are all of the medical journals that here's the list of medical journals and doctors that I was following on YouTube during that time. And then he's like, well, how are you doing? And I was like, well, I can take a 30-minute walk like I used to. I can do my yoga like I used to. I can't play sports with my kids like I used to, but I'm getting there. I was like, I'm feeling like I'm fully recovered or I'm fully recovering. I do at times, I'll eat something that causes a trigger. So that's where I've really had to learn how to live with a new body. I can't push my body like I used to. I can't do the things, like I said, I can't play sports with my kids like I used to. Will I be able to in the future? I hope so, for sure, because I love playing baseball. I love baseball and I love playing defense and soccer. So those are things that I really love to do with my kids. And then we would go to the park often and we would run around and play and do those kinds of things. And so, again, those are things that I'm hoping to do in the future. I can't at this time, but I know that I'm on my way as long as I keep up with my journal, keep up with the diet, especially. Continuing to really pay attention. I mean, after after I mostly got the hang of the food, I started on the GI tract. I was like, I've got to heal my gut. I've got to heal the leaky gut. I've got to heal the inflammation in my gut. And that's been working since I really started targeting my gut health. And especially, the microbiome is so important for your immune system. I have lost 2 inches around like the girth of my body. Cause I'm like you don't see me, but like if you saw me from the waist down, my waist is, much larger, but it's because of the inflammation that I have in my gut, which, now also like I'm gonna do a video about like what if being fat isn't your fault, because I've done all of these things throughout my life to lose weight and I still have weight on me. Well, now I know it's because it's not actually a result of fat, it's actually a result of inflammation. So I hope that you found this video helpful. Sorry, it's a little bit longer. I'm cramming in, a lot of information because I'm not going to make a part 2 long COVID video. But I hope that you find the resources that I found to be helpful in my recovery. There are support groups in the UK. I did not join any of them because I was so focused on my recovery. But if you and honestly, like I would just do a search engine search, whatever your search engine that you like to use, just do like long hauler groups. They have them here in the US, but I don't know who or where they are or like about them. I don't know if they exist, to be honest. Um, but they're prevalent in the UK and in Canada. So if you feel the need to reach out to a support group to get support, because there are times in the journey whenever you feel like you're never going to feel better, you're never going to get better. There are definitely those times of fear and depression and, hopelessness and despair. And whenever you're feeling in those times, reach out to, those groups or the people that are running those groups, or, even try to find, maybe there are groups in the US now for long haulers, but at the time that I was looking back in April, there weren't. And I'm making this video in July, at the end of July. So I hope that you found this to be incredibly helpful. I just wanted to basically pass along everything that I had learned because I learned so much from other YouTubers and from their videos and from their journey. And I just wanted to do my due diligence and pass that on to you all. So Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next video. Hi. If you like the content that I create, please do make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. And check out my website, naturallyinspiredmedia.com, and some of the other videos that I have produced here.